What is a rebound effect? We come through and retrofit this house. Caulk guns and screw in compact fluorescent light bulbs, and our energy bill goes from, for this house, what? Well, it's in California, $200 a month down to $50 a month, and we've cut our energy use, what, 2/3. So we go out and buy the biggest plasma screen TV that we can, at which point our energy bill is back up to $200. Yeah, that thing. Back up to $200 a month, and all we have done is traded one consumptive inefficiency for another consumptive use, arguably of greater value to us than the money going out the windows, because the windows aren't caulked and are single glazed. But nonetheless, from the system as a whole, same amount of energy being used. And that's this problem of that's precisely this issue. We need to have our carbon emissions going down, and they keep going up, despite whatever efforts we're putting into it. Okay, they're going up less rapidly than they would have been if we didn't put the effort into it, but they're still going up. And this is why people like Bill McDonough say efficiency is wrong. It's bad. Don't be efficient. You're never, if your goal is to get to Mexico and you're driving to Canada, you're not going to get to Mexico. You have to turn around. You got to do something totally different. To which I would point out to Bill, if you're going 100 miles an hour towards Canada and you want to get to Mexico, don't do a U-turn. You're going to roll. Slow down a little bit first. And I had this conversation with Dana. Shortly before she died, I was in one of my bleak moods, and I said, what use is all this damned efficiency? All it does is just, we're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And Dana said, no, you're not. You're buying time. Having learned that, I think, from the failure of limits.
Joanna Macy talks about that too.
Buying time is very important, but what are you buying time for? Which is why when we wrote the book Natural Capitalism, we were going to put an article on it in one of the magazines. Paul Hawken wanted Fast Company. We said, no, Harvard Business. It is the magazine that the people who run the world read. So we wrote an article for HBR, sent it off. They wrote back and said, we don't get it. What are your principles? I said, principles? Efficiency. Biomimicry. Amory said, the solutions economy. I said, Dave Brower, restoration. Conservation, preservation, restoration, CPR for the earth. Fine. Okay, we have 4 principles. So we rewrote the paper, sent it off to HBR. They wrote back and said, oh, beautiful, and printed it. And I said to the boys, okay, we should rewrite the book around the 4 principles. This is a great new intellectual architecture. They looked at me like I was daft. The book was overdue to the publisher, and it's a big book. And it's like, yeah, okay. So we rewrote the first chapter. If you read the book Natural Capitalism, in the first chapter you will find 4 principles proudly stated, and you will never see them again in the rest of the book. So we set about trying to implement all of this stuff, create a whole consulting group around the world we go. And it turns out that principle 3 doesn't work. This notion of the solutions economy, that we're, rather than selling stuff and buying stuff, we're going to sell the service of it, the Wes Birdsall concept. Yeah, well, sorry, people want stuff. And the people that are trying to sell the service of stuff can't get the accounting right, and there aren't really any good examples, certainly no pervasive throughout the economy examples of it. So when I created Natural Capitalism Solutions, we disappeared the 3rd principle. So if you go on my website, you will see 3 principles of natural capitalism. I also changed them from nouns, efficiency, biomimicry, solutions economy, and restoration, to verbs. Buy time, using efficiency. In part because it's profitable right now, and because it staves off most of the proximate disasters. Number 2, redesign. how we make and deliver everything, because the way in which we're doing it now is unsustainable, redesign using approaches like biomimicry and Walter Stahel's cradle to cradle and the circular economy. And 3, manage our institutions to be restorative of human and natural capital, the capital that you're losing in Indonesia. So how do you organize the institutions to manage them, to enhance the capital? Because if we're good capitalists, this is what we should be seeking to do: enhance all forms of capital, manufactured, financial, human, and natural. And this is better capitalism. And in theory will lead to the creation of greater wealth for all, greater prosperity. That's the current state of play, which is to say, we're still making this stuff up as we go along. And I say to my students, for the next 2 years, you're my students. After that, you're my colleagues. So let's start behaving that way right now. If I say something and you think I'm wrong, please speak up. You could well be right. If I were any damn good, we'd have solved these problems.
I'm going to ask a question that's probably pretty daft. You said that you removed solutions economy because you couldn't sell anything as a service, and yet anything as a service is one of the major trends impacting business today. So I'm a little, I feel like I'm missing something. Could you just elaborate on that?
I think it's a tool. I think it's a very valuable tool to use to enhance the efficiency of what you're doing and to some extent to redesign how you make and deliver stuff. But I don't think it's a fundamental principle. Now, we can disagree. Amory and I disagree about many things.
Yeah, it's something I'd be interested in talking more about. I realize it wasn't hijacking the conversation.
We held a group a few years back trying to figure it out and couldn't. How do you actually implement it in a way that would make it a principle? And this whole field, I don't have that slide in here. If you define the field as sustainability, there are a whole series of frameworks. To me, a framework is a mental model that defines what it is and lays out a general roadmap of how you get there. So there's natural capitalism, there's natural step, there's Alan Savory's holistic management, you could argue ecological economics. There are a whole series of frameworks. Is biomimicry a framework? Janine would probably say yes. In my taxonomy, no, it's a tool. And I think Janine would probably, if we went through this, she and I have been around this a time or two, I think she'd probably agree. Is McDonough's cradle-to-cradle a framework? Stahel's cradle-to-cradle, I think, is a framework. Is McDonough's? Okay, give it to Bill. Fine, it's a framework. But you can begin to see the state of the conversation. Now, all of this conversation about what's a framework and what's a tool grew out of a speech I gave at UNIDO, UN Industrial Development Organization, in, I want to say 2003? Yeah. Fall of 2003 at their annual General Assembly, where Michael Braungart and I had a fight. Michael and Bill at the time were very fond of going around bashing natural capitalism and saying, no, it's cradle to cradle. And the UN wanted to know which was it, and did any of these have any relevance to developing countries? So I argued, what is natural capitalism? And yes, it does have relevance. Michael bashed on natural capitalism, and the UN decided they liked natural capitalism. Michael lost. I was sitting up in the internet cafe, and this pair of arms comes around me, and I look up, and it's Michael. He said, "Can we not fight?" I said, "Bueno, I didn't cause this fight in the first place."
Would you have done that if he'd won?
I don't know. And my first thing was, well, tell your partner. And so Michael and I spent the evening in Vienna, had a wonderful time, became very good friends. And I guess in due course he did tell Bill, because at the Clinton Global Initiative, Bill came up, gave me a hug. And at his recent launch down at Google of the Green Product Innovation Lab, Bill asked if I'd be an advisor to them. So we're starting to have a bit of coming together of the field and a recognition that there are too few of us to be fighting each other. We're like a damn bucket of crabs. As soon as one of us starts to get any traction, the rest of them claw them down. And we can have these kind of conversations in meetings like this, where we're all a part of it. But my practice these days is to try to not bash any of the other practitioners. Fine, if you think the service economy is the principle, brilliant, make it work. I don't know how to, so I'm going to focus on the ones I know how to. If you can make it work, hell, I'll reframe what I do. I reframe it every now and again anyway.
I think, just if I could build on that a little bit, and Michelle and I are both coming from definitely working for companies that are more or less internet companies, and so it's sort of a situation where, maybe it's because we're bathing in it, but, I think we think of it both a framework and a tool. Amazon's definitely selling, well, we're in the business of consuming electrons, but that's not what we sell as a company.
Well, read Jeff Jarvis.
Right. Yeah, okay.
You may want to rethink what it is you sell.
Right. Yeah, well, we're trying to sell as much as we can with as few electrons as possible, but, I think Amazon is in the process.
Have you read that book?
I have not read that book.
Suggest you read that book. Then let's have this conversation. I think this is one of the most important business books written about this new economy that we're in. Book by Jeff Jarvis called What Would Google Do? Very, very important book.
You mentioned water as a key challenge, potentially a key opportunity. It's something that's really attractive to me right now in the sense that a water basin is something that people can identify with where they live, and some of the principles of integrated watershed management could be more universal. Where do you see innovation happening at the water-climate nexus? Because we've got climate change for so many is happening through water. It's too much, it's too little, it's coming at the wrong time, crops aren't coming to harvest. Where's the innovation there?
Jamie Workman.
Assignment.
A book called The Heart of Dryness.
Okay.
And how long are you guys here?
Friday.
You might give Jamie a call. He lives in the city, and he'd be a brilliant presenter. Jamie was Bruce Babbitt's speechwriter, worked with Bruce trying to get dams taken down. He spent a number of years living with the Bushmen of the Kalahari and has just a brilliant presentation on what he learned from that, which is embodied in this book, The Heart of Dryness. He believes that the experience of the Bushmen had lived for a long time without water. Then the government of Botswana said, "Oh, you poor benighted souls, we'll bring you water." So they drilled boreholes and put in dribblers and brought truckloads of water until somebody discovered diamonds, at which point they said, people in the way of the diamonds. Okay, away you go. The way to make people go away is to take away their water. And indeed, some of the Bushmen said, we can't live without water, and moved to the reservations. Some of them said, wait a minute, we lived here before the government brought us water. We can go back to our old ways. And Jamie lived with the group that was doing that. And says that is the analogy for all of us in a water-short world. We are going to get to learn to live in a very different relationship with water.
What was his last name?
Workman, Workman. His book just won a big award, so it's possible that he's not around. He's off touring the book a fair amount. Brilliant man, brilliant speaker. He and a partner, I want to say Monty Simus, are putting together a water market, a market in saved water.